This news is developing as I speak. Things are getting more detailed and more complicated, but it is a harbinger, a very bad show of things that may be coming down the line. Let's start off with the news we got from earlier this morning on Don Lemon being arrested by agents after the protest at the Minnesota church. The former CNN anchor and independent journalist Don Lemon was arrested by federal agents in Los Angeles in connection with the reporting on the protest that disrupted a church in St. Paul, Minnesota. Authorities said the protest targeted a church where local officials was a U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement agent. The pastor, one of the pastors, was essentially the lead agent there in the city, and it was a big deal. It turned into a demonstration where people disrupted the church service and had anti-ICE chants. Lemon, who went in following along with the crowd, told his producers and told people online to something was going on, and then they basically waited outside until the actual riot, for lack of a better term, happened, covering the event on his online platform as an independent journalist, taken in custody yesterday night in Los Angeles, where he was there to cover the Oscars and had a big time thing promoting his Oscars coverage. But they picked him up in Los Angeles for what happened about 2 weeks ago in Minneapolis, Minnesota. His lawyer said the arrest was an infringement on his press freedom. Something that just got added a little while ago, I saw a video from independent journalist Georgia Fort. She was arrested this morning by federal agents related to the same protests. She live streamed the arrest at her home on Facebook Live, telling viewers she was being taken into custody for filming the incident weeks back. She said she was acting in her capacity as a member of the press and questioned whether the First Amendment rights were being violated in her sense. Both journalists are among a small group facing federal actions tied to protest disruption. Kash Patel came out with a message basically at the same time, saying that four actual journalists, I don't have this in my notes, but four actual people were being targeted, basically picked up for this in particular. Four people for essentially inciting the riot that was there, acting in the capacity of dangerous persons and not in the actual official or unofficial world of independent journalists, even though they were there recording and they were there to document. That was just a part of their cover to be a part of the actual incident. Now, this took place on January the 18th, inside City's Church in St. Paul, where the ICE demonstrators chanted "ICE out" and "Justice for Renee Good," referring to the woman that was killed by the ICE officer basically earlier. Now, police and prosecutors say the disruption interfered with a religious service. Federal officials under Attorney General Pam Bondi described the arrest as linked to a coordinated attack on the place of worship. Essentially, from the administration, this was set up as a coordinated attack from the get-go. This was something that was there to attack the pastor or co-pastor, who actually was a high-ranking ICE official at his church, and not just a protest of the public. That was something that was organic and just came out of nowhere. Although the full charges against Lemon and Fort have not been publicly disclosed, authorities have suggested that potential violations of laws protecting access to houses of worship are where things are headed. Lemon's attorney, Abby Lowell, defended his presence at the protest as journalistic work protected by the First Amendment. They said he was not affiliated with the protest organizers. He was just there documenting events, and he interviewed some worshipers and participants and many folks inside the church on the both sides, if you will, that were involved in the issue. Lemon said he repeatedly said that he repeatedly was there as a journalist, and they very loudly said that, not as a demonstrator, not with the groups, but there to document what was happening as it happened. Civil rights advocates and press freedom groups have expressed concern that charges for reporting on protests could actually start to put a bit of a chill on journalistic integrity and journalism itself, as people covering the protests are now subject to being part of the actual action for being picked up in the protest. Now, before the arrest, the federal magistrate judge in Minnesota refused to actually prove charges against Lemon himself for the church protests. The judge said, no, we're not going to go after him, finding it insufficient evidence at that stage. The prosecutors pursued an indictment, and then apparently arrests were carried out in Los Angeles yesterday. These three other individuals, which includes civil rights attorney Nakira Levi Armstrong, and activist Chauvin Louise Allen, previously charged and arrested over disruption. The legal fight had highlighted tensions between federal enforcement, religious freedom protections, and the press right to be involved. Supporters of the arrest, and right now, this is early, argue that disrupting a church service can violate federal laws that protect houses of worship, and that authorities are obliged to enforce those protections regardless of those involved. The enforcement sends a message that religious services should not be targeted for protest actions that interrupt worship. Meanwhile, press freedom. Critics say arresting journalists like Lemon, like Fort, for covering what's being presented as a protest could undermine the press freedom to cover protests and get the word out for reality. If this protest is really such a bad thing, why not have independent journalists or licensed journalists, if you want to call them that, be there to document it as it happens, because you'll have the proof going for them, unless it doesn't quite go the way of the magistrate. Observers worry that charging journalists for being near or documenting any protests may set a dangerous precedent that blurs the line between journalists and activism. It's pretty simple. It's pretty clear. It is happening. I am not by all means saying that we're having a crackdown on all freedom of the press and all information coming back from the administration, but this is a targeted act to intimidate some people to either be a part of the protest or be a part of the movement to spread the word of the protest that is against the administration. These two individuals and the civil rights leaders who were actually probably part of the protest are being targeted to scare some people off. Is it going to work? We shall see going forward as it happens, but don't be surprised if more people who are documenting things are being targeted for their documentation and their involvement and their movements. And it's going to be even harder for them to defend themselves and to push back themselves if they are the folks that work independently, such as things on TikTok and on YouTube and do things like that. I'm not saying that people are knocking at my door anytime soon, but it may become a little harder to get the information out to people that is not exactly shining big rosy lights and big old just love on the administration. We're not at the point where dissidence has been knocked out completely, but this is something that everyone should have an idea that we kind of see where this could be going.